Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. Hamza Yousaf will be a little bit relieved because of the vote last night. He won the vote on the Justice Reform Bill that he was trying to get through. However, it was a Pyrrhic victory, for whilst he won the vote, he's lost an awful lot of credibility. The vote went through, but with only 60 votes for it. But there were 62 abstentions. This is not a good look, and it is certainly not the result he wanted. For whilst it's obvious that it will go through, it only just did. One more rebel on the side of the SNP, and it would have failed. And there were rebels. Kate Forbes led the rebellion, of course. You'd expect no less. She's been very much anti this entire process the whole time. She's saying that it was an awful bill that should never have gone through. But it was wonderfully to see, I suppose, another damaging night as the Scottish Parliament, basically passed the flagship justice reforms, and it was the fact that it was just so tight for him that has done it. There was a humiliating number of people voting against it. The rebellion last night was wonderful to behold. He must have been very nervous as the votes came in. He knew it would be tight, and it just didn't coalesce and gel. So it's got to go through and have more sort of discussions and push through. This is only the first stage of the bill. It's going to go off and be sort of scrutinised deeper. But if he can't handle this and get this through in the first reading, with barely getting it through, it's unlikely that it's going to go through fully by the end. But Kate Forbes, she led the merry band of rebels. They refused to vote for the legislation. Yousaf himself suffered yet another damaging night for his leadership. Fergus Ewing, Annabel Ewing, Michelle Thompson, Ivan McKee, they all failed to offer their support. They voted against it. And that is the usual crowd, I suppose you could say, the usual rebels, the usual troublemakers voting against. But for Hamza Yousaf, it will be the abstentions. Now, the trouble was, of course, it was a very, very large bill. There were too many things trying to be pushed through in one go. A lot of people didn't like that. A lot of the things were claims. There was no evidence of the changes were necessary or the changes were needed or even any kind of reasoning behind the changes. For some of the things, it seemed like change for the sake of change. That said, despite that little mini civil war, it passed. The first stage, as I say, it's got to go off and be scrutinised. But all the opposition parties abstained. And some of the most contentious aspects of the laws, which include the juryless trial for R and the not proven verdict being scrapped, have been the big controversial points. Now, even if this law passes totally after this, all the stages, and it's unlikely that this will happen, but even if it did, it will not work. The juryless part will fail. The reason being, of course, is that the entire judicial process, from judges to KCs to lawyers, have all said they'll boycott it. They will refuse to represent a juryless trial. And if that's the case, then what's going to happen? It will absolutely bog down the judicial system. What this is another example of Hamza Yousaf having a bright idea without thinking it through, because he thinks he knows best. Don't forget, this is a man who used to work in a call centre. He's completely uneducated. He's not experienced. He knows nothing about the social justice system. And yet, here he is, trying to legislate it. An absolute moron. Russell Findlay from the Tories, he said that the reforms were not bold and radical, as Hamza Yousaf claimed, but were experimental. They were founded on wishful thinking rather than evidence, and that it was a very clunky, confusing, unworkable law. He said, and it's no surprise that it's likely to fail. He was just very surprised it passed the first reading. I think we all are. But when nobody votes for it, effectively, except the SNP loyalists, you know you've got a very bad law. And that's, of course, the big problem. They're looking also at bringing in yet another commissioner on a very high pay and with all his staff. It's not needed. We don't need a commissioner for law. Not when you've got, Solicitor General, Crown Prosecutor, and all these. You've got so many people responsible for the law. Why do you need a commissioner as well? It's a way of removing power from Parliament and handing it to private individuals who are not elected. There are so many things wrong with this. And yet, it still passed the first stage. Unlikely to go through without changes, which is great. All the committees will work hard now to try and talk everything down. Pauline McNeill from Labour said that it was an unworkable law. She said the whole point of having the juryless trial was not created to boost the conviction rate, even though this was part of the argument. She said it was a way of just control of justice. It's all bad. No matter what he does, he gets everything wrong. Now, Angela Constance was deeply worried. She has been personally criticised. She said that this law would be a massive, massive boost to Scotland's legal system. Well, she's the only one who thinks so. She wants juryless trials, and she wants juryless trials for everything. If they can bring it in for one particular subject, of women, then they can salami slice it and say, well, how about this? And then we'll put it there, and then we'll take it there. Until eventually there'll be no juries anywhere. And that way they control the entire justice system. They will know who is guilty before the defendant walks even into court, because they'll own the judges and they'll own the solicitors, they'll own the KCs, they own everybody. That is not justice, that is dictatorship. And that is why so many people either voted against it or didn't vote at all. Nobody wants to be seen to be backing this. Humza Yousaf now must know that even though he won the vote, he's lost all credibility, and he knows this is the last throw of the dice and that his time is up. And he looks at Kate Forbes across that chamber now, who is now in open rebellion against him. Tick-tock, tick-tock. Humza, your time is up. And it's not before time. Thanks very much for listening. Stay safe, stay well, and I will speak to you later. Bye.